There haven't been a whole lot of bright spots in 2025 so far, but one that I'd like to acknowledge is the Oscars finally including a stunt category. After years of campaigning by stunt performers and coordinators, it is, in my opinion, an unambiguously good thing. On top of that, we're also getting the final Mission Impossible movie, at least final for now. The Mission Impossible franchise has become, in my opinion, the most reliable and most consistent big-budget franchise of the past couple decades. And if this truly is the last one, I'm gonna miss it. So I wanted to take some time and talk about Mission Impossible, how it became what it is, and how it ended up changing how Hollywood produces and markets action films, and how those changes might have actually hurt it a little bit in the end. The first Mission Impossible came out way back in the olden times, 1996. The film was a reimagining of the 1960s TV series, and it really hit the ground running. It has some genuinely impressive stunts and sequences, and it's honestly kind of crazy how many iconic moments there are in that movie. It was also a massive hit. It made $458 million, and it was the third biggest movie of the year. However, the burgeoning franchise stumbled a little bit with Mission Impossible 2, which came out in 2000 and did pretty well. It grossed $546 million, but it was considered a bit of a critical failure. It only has 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. And while the film didn't skimp on the stunts or action, American audiences didn't seem quite in tune with John Woo's hyper-stylist, maximalist action set pieces. What's kind of funny is that for years, I always thought Mission Impossible 3 as having been the one to save the series. And in some ways it kind of did. There was a 6-year gap between MI2 and MI3. So in that sense, it very much relaunched the franchise. But it actually made less money than Mission Impossible 2. It made about $398 million, and it got 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is better, but it's not like a critical smash. So all in all, MI3 is a bit of a mixed bag. But despite the lower box office, Paramount plowed ahead and tapped Brad Bird to take over from J.J. Abrams. In much the same way that the fourth Fast and Furious relaunched that franchise, but it was Fast 5 that really reinvigorated it, MI3 might have technically relaunched the series, but it was the fourth film, Ghost Protocol, that really reinvigorated it. Ghost Protocol has an impressive 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it grossed about $695 million. Personally, Fallout is my favorite film in the series, but I'm pretty sure Ghost Protocol is still actually the best film in the series. I really love how it leans into everything just going wrong and haywire, and the team having to improvise with no support. And as a side note, there's probably a whole video essay to be made about movies that are secretly about making movies. And Ghost Protocol is right near the top of that list. Anyway, another thing that changed was how Ghost Protocol was marketed. While MI3 had its share of stunts, and those played into the marketing of the film a little bit, they were presented in the pretty classic sense of, hey, look at this action, whereas Ghost Protocol marketed the Burj Khalifa sequence very specifically as, hey, look at this stunt. If you're not sure what the difference is between hey, look at this action and hey, look at this stunt, let me explain. The big final moment in the MI3 trailer is when Ethan is thrown into a car by an explosion. It's a cool shot, it's a great stunt, but Paramount didn't really highlight that it was a stunt, just that it was an action sequence. However, with Ghost Protocol, the marketers clearly knew they had something special on their hands. They actually released the behind-the-scenes featurette about how they did the Burj Khalifa stunt before they even released the main trailer. And if you've never seen Ghost Protocol, the Burj Khalifa stunt is when Ethan Hunt has to climb up the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, to access a forbidden room. It's a great scene, great movie. Definitely check it out if you haven't. And from that point on, the franchise was never the same. The huge critical and commercial success of Ghost Protocol was replicated several years later with Rogue Nation, which grossed nearly as much, about $683 million, and has an identical 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. And crucially, this time, Paramount put Tom Cruise's big plane stunt front and center in the marketing. It's on a lot of the posters, the YouTube thumbnails, and the stunt featurette got almost as many views on YouTube as the main trailer. This focus on the realness of the stunts, the fact that it was actually Tom Cruise himself doing them, differentiated the franchise from the ubiquitous superhero genre of the time. Whereas superhero films involve beings with powers that can really only be created via CGI, Mission Impossible went out of its way to show Ethan Hunt as being just a guy.
What are you waiting for? I'm jumping out a window! Good luck!
In between Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, another film was released. It was much smaller. It only made $14 million in its opening weekend, but John Wick would become a minor sleeper hit and spawn increasingly successful sequels and eventually spin-offs. A big part of John Wick's success was Lionsgate's choice to highlight the fact that Keanu Reeves was performing many of his own stunts and fight choreography. John, it seems, was taking a page directly out of Ethan's marketing playbook. Meanwhile, the next film in the Mission Impossible franchise was Fallout. For Fallout, Paramount focused mainly on the halo jump sequence. The stunt involved Tom Cruise jumping out of a plane 106 times. And once again, the marketing worked. Fallout was the highest grossing film in the series, making $792 million. It also has the highest Rotten Tomatoes score, 98%. Mission Impossible was on a roll, as was John Wick. The two films spawned a host of imitators like Atomic Blonde, Nobody, Kingsman, and just so many Jason Statham movies. And that brings us to 2023 when we got Dead Reckoning Part 1. The first in a two-part conclusion to the Mission Impossible Ethan Hunt franchise. It cost a whopping $300 million to produce, and the two films promised to be the biggest and most elaborate in the series thus far. And so Dead Reckoning Part 1 was released, and it was a bit of a box office disappointment. Interestingly, it has 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is in line with the rest of the films, but it only made $571 million. That's not a flop or anything, but it's over $200 million less than Fallout made. It underperformed enough that Paramount chose to rename the second film and ditch the Part 2 in the title. But if it was as critically acclaimed as Fallout, why did it underperform? There's a few different reasons that have been floated around. Some people blamed a COVID hangover still in theaters. Others the fact that since it was only Part 1, audiences didn't think it was a self-contained film. It also lost all its IMAX screens to Oppenheimer a couple weeks later, which certainly didn't help. But my hot take is that Paramount made a strategic error in their choice of stunt to highlight. Dead Reckoning's big stunt involved Tom Cruise jumping a motorcycle off a mountainside and parachuting down towards a moving train. It's undoubtedly an impressive stunt, but I think the filmmakers and marketers missed one key element that ended up kinda hurting them. The behind-the-scenes videos, of which there are many, show a big ramp that Tom is driving up and flying off of. Those same videos then show the final footage as it exists in the film, which shows Cruise driving over a bumpy, rocky terrain of the mountain itself, making it clear that there was a decent amount of CGI involved to make the stunt happen. Now, this happened to coincide with the peak of CGI backlash. By 2023, superhero movies had begun to struggle a bit, particularly with the releases of The Flash and Quantumania, both of which were criticized for their heavy over-reliance on cheap-looking CGI. This was exacerbated by the fact that the biggest movie of 2022 was Top Gun: Maverick, and that film went out of its way to point out that there was no CGI.
It's very important to me that it be practical, that we actually put the camera right in there and shoot the sequences for real. I said, I'm not going to make this film unless we can accomplish that.
CGI just doesn't cut it. There's nothing like the real thing.
In order for this to be perfect, the aviation sequences had to be real.
I'm actually just going to link to Movie Rabbit Hole's No CGI is Really Just Invisible CGI video, because it dives much deeper into Top Gun Maverick's claims and how a lot of those claims kind of stretched the truth a bit, but I'll leave it to him because I don't have time to go into all of that here. My larger point is that between Mission Impossible, John Wick, Maverick, and others, audiences were clearly interested in more realistic action, which meant more realistic stunts. And the studios leaned into this hard, particularly in their marketing of these films. Which brings us back to Dead Reckoning's motorcycle jump. Even though Tom Cruise is clearly actually doing the jump, I think even just that exposure of the artifice, the tacit admission that CGI was involved, turned audiences off just a little bit. Editor Steve here. I just wanted to take a second to address a couple of points that I think this guy kind of missed. I don't want it to sound like I am criticizing the Mission Impossible franchise for building their entire series around showing off cool stunts. That's practically how Hollywood was born. After all, the very first movies were basically just guys pointing cameras at vaudeville acts, and occasionally oncoming trains. And probably the most famous vaudeville actor to transition into film was Buster Keaton. Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves, director Chad Stahelski, Jackie Chan, they all consider Buster Keaton to be one of their biggest influences. Keaton basically established the template of performing death-defying stunts on film, and over 100 years later, I'd say it's really only Tom Cruise and Jackie Chan who have come close to matching or even sometimes exceeding what Keaton did. So again, I am not criticizing the Mission Impossible franchise for building their movies increasingly around cool stunts. It is a tradition as old as cinema itself. And it's not like the Mission Impossible movies don't have good plots, good character arcs, emotional beats.
Who or what is the most important thing to you?
Say it.
My friends.
They're well-structured movies, genuinely. Really, this video is meant to be an appreciation of the franchise, especially if we never see it again, which we probably will, but even so, this era has been fantastic. I can't wait to see The Final Reckoning, and anytime one of the other films is on like Pluto or something, I end up watching basically the whole thing. So, long live Mission Impossible. Alright, that's enough of me. Let's get back to this other slightly less handsome guy. In insisting so heavily that all their stunts were real, they trained people to reject anything that would suggest otherwise. And of course, all the stunts in the Mission Impossible franchise involve at least a little CGI. The halo jump might have happened in one take, technically, but they didn't actually fly through a real thunderstorm. Yes, Tom did hang on to a plane that was taking off, but there were safety wires that had to be painted out in post, so we'll soon see if Paramount can recover from Dead Reckoning's misstep. The marketing for The Final Reckoning has highlighted crews hanging onto another plane, which is visually reminiscent of Rogue Nation's big stunt scene. It's as if the filmmakers are trying to reassure audiences that this is still the same Mission Impossible they'd grown to love. Will that be enough? Personally, I hope so. As I said earlier, I think Mission Impossible has been the most consistent, high-quality, big-budget franchise of the last couple decades, and it's filled with some of the best action sequences that have ever been put to film. Just off the top of my head, a few of my personal favorites are the helicopter chase in Fallout, the bathroom fight in Fallout, the Kremlin heist in Ghost Protocol, that opening prison escape in Ghost Protocol, the car chase with the little yellow Fiat in Dead Reckoning, the fight on top of a bullet train in the first film, and of course all of Tom Cruise's running scenes. Look, whatever else there's to say about Tom Cruise, you can't argue that the man looks good running. I also hope The Final Reckoning succeeds because I want more movies that focus on executing amazing stunts. And Hollywood has a tendency to chase success. After all, we got the John Wick franchise, at least in part because of Mission Impossible's success. But Keanu Reeves, just like Tom Cruise, is getting older, and it's time we find their successors. Especially after the box office disappointment of Fall Guy, which is a shame because it's a solid movie that you should absolutely check out, I am a little concerned that the 1-2 punch of Fall Guys and Dead Reckoning's underperformances will have a chilling effect on stunt-forward films in the future. So if I can give some advice to the film executives and marketers who are definitely not watching this video, I would just say, pull back a little bit on the no CGI claims, because they're not true. It's also unfair to CGI, which is just a tool. It's only really bad when it's either overused or used poorly. And after all, I don't actually want actors and stunt performers to be put in harm's way just so studio marketers can say it's all real. I'm fine with painting out wires, covering up ramps, removing crash pads, but I just don't want to be lied to, and I don't think audiences do either. And mostly at the end of the day, I just want to watch a bunch of great stunts. And I hope there are many, many more to come in the future. Alright, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and comment down below with your favorite Mission Impossible scenes. Is it one of the stunts? Is it one of the car chases? Is it just Ethan running? I've also got a feature film coming out soon called Sight Unseen. It is not an action movie. It is a horror film, but I'll link to the trailer. Stay tuned for more there. But in the meantime, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.